everybody. My name is Daryl, and this is Dion.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Where We Stand, a series where we talk about the games we've recently played and discuss how much we may or may not have enjoyed them. Today, we are talking about Resident Evil 7, which is available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. We will be discussing spoilers, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear them. Now that we're queued up and ready to go, let's get started.
Let's talk first about our experience with the series. I think that's an important backdrop to our experience and why we feel the way we do about the game. So my experience has been Resident Evil 5 co-op. I played back in high school, so a while ago, and that was kind of where I dipped in. I'm not really into horror games often. I don't really play them. I only played this after being forced into it. But after playing this, I am looking forward to more of the series. Daryl, how about your experience?
Well, I'm gonna out you real quick and say, as you put in this document, I am a Resident Evil fanatic. So I love most things that are Resident Evil, and can't wait to see what else comes in the future. I've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now Village or 8. I'm going to save my naming convention on the whole 8 or Village thing rant for later, but that's all you really need to know about me and Resident Evil. I know things.
Played them all. That's all you had to say. Story. Let's talk a little bit about the story of this game. Obviously, this game introduces a new character, which even I knew. You play as Ethan, middle-aged man searching for his wife, Mia. She is going missing at a mansion in Louisiana. You meet the deranged Baker family who is holding her hostage as you make attempts to cure her of the virus and make it out alive. So that's kind of the general synopsis of the game. We're going to take you a quick dive through the different experiences and levels of the game to give you our full thoughts. Let's talk about the beginning first.
So in the beginning of the game, your goal is, well, it takes place in the mansion, the main home, and during that period of time, well, not yet. Before that, you're looking for Mia and the Bakers, and that's essentially you going through what was essentially the remnants of people who wandered onto their property or were kidnapped by the family and tormented. This portion of the game really leans into the horror aspect, and this is where people got a little worried originally that it might lean more towards Outlast, since Outlast was the big thing during this time, but it gets very Resident Evil later. Moving on, there are dark rooms, plenty of jump scares that I would deem aren't really jump scares, but they'll get you if you're the type to be very tense, and the environment does keep you tense. You don't have weapons, just a flashlight, which I'm surprised Ethan even brought, I guess he figured he might need it. Mia didn't say bring a flashlight in her email or anything like that, but
Smart move, though.
Yeah, smart move. He probably had it in his car or something. There come points where there are moments of conflict, typically between you and Mia by this point. After you find her turned or fighting her transformation half the time. So you're quickly making split-second decisions to get away, and then you Ethan has this weird thing about him where he could just guard and block a lot of damage, and I'm like, I want those hands. He could just take it. And this is before he's infected, so dude's a rock, I guess. Don't let Chris find you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this whole first part for me, we're calling this the first hour, which it's very important. This is what they talk about being the scary part for sure. It's dark rooms, tense the whole time, and I was playing. I had to play the game with Daryl on the line as well, because otherwise I could not play through this game. I was not gonna make it.
Nope.
And it's creepy. There's parts where Mia does weird things, and they're jump scary. I think they are jump scares for sure. You see a body in the river all of a sudden. They do things that classic horror, as what I have a feeling. I think it does take a lot from Outlast, and that was the point. It's very interesting how they, this is how they start the game, which is it's not the standard Resident Evil necessarily. From my conversations, let's put it that way. I haven't played that way.
My quick side note is not just other, it's not just classic horror tropes. They have I think they've gone on record even saying like, yeah, we took from we not took, but like we were inspired by Chainsaw Massacre, other popular horror movies, some horror games. As soon as Jack picked up the scissors, I'm like, that's Scissor Man. We're getting Clock Tower up in here. it like, oh boy, it was a fun house of horror. You were saying?
So I want to move on to just the mansion in general. After you completed the first hour of the game, you move to a mansion where Jack is pretty much the father of the family. He is the big bad in this area. You have Jack as a stalker the whole time.
Yep.
Which, well, not the whole time, but, good portions of it, which I hate stalker enemies. But either way, you got Jack. The gameplay, you start opening up, you start getting, you get your first gun, you have a little bit of ammo, you can kind of fight a little bit. So this is where it starts kind of opening up. I think this is more, in my opinion, from what I've seen, like the classic Resident Evil 1 style, where you don't have much guns, you're kind of making it through, you're trying to save and conserve ammo.
Yep.
I do want to highlight that the world design in this area is beautiful. This mansion is very believable. It looks lived in. You get to locations that are slightly infected, so the design is just really cool and really draws you in. The tone draws you in. Even though it's tense and has a fear factor to it, I think it's a very strong point of the game.
I really enjoyed my time in the mansion as well. It definitely reminded me of Resident Evil 1 and the like, but it had its moments where it had its moments where even when Jack wasn't around, I felt tense because he could be anywhere and whatnot, and you'll hear him because you'll hear him stomping around, yelling, and sometimes he'll even yell, Ethan. You're just like, don't, please stop. But in true Resident Evil fashion, he's not going to walk into the save room. So if you enter the save room, he's not going to go in there. You're fine.
Doesn't feel like it. Just to be safe, it doesn't feel like it.
No, they don't want you to feel safe, but it's funny. Moving along, after you deal with Jack twice, mind you, the first time is him essentially dealing with himself to show you that he can heal really quickly. The second time you deal with him is an outright boss battle where he's out of the game, more or less, sort of, kind of, not really, for good. And then you have to deal with his wife, Marguerite. Marguerite is essentially she's infested with insects because the mold, which is the virus that has occurred and taken over their home in this game. It gives everyone some weird quirk or some, I don't want to say quirk, but some ability, some sort of ability that can kind of range from a few different things as we came to know. Jack essentially just had the super strength and the healing capabilities, but Marguerite, she can communicate with insects and this and the other. She even has a wasp on her cooch. I'm gonna put it bluntly, I'm sorry. It was freaky. I don't ever want to see that again. But it's her weak point in the boss fight, where she is essentially a spider and crawls all over the place. But besides that all takes place outside in the swamp area. And honestly, that was probably, I think Marguerite section is actually the least interesting part of the game for me.
Think so? I don't know. I mean, no, you know what? When I think about it, I agree. It is definitely the least. I do like the map. I don't think it's as good as the mansion. It's smaller too.
Much more linear too.
Very much more linear, not as much going on, but you do start getting access to a few more gun options, I think, which I found enjoyable. And the gameplay it's more, it's more of that classic. I would even say it's starting to get even more actiony at that point for Resident Evil. And then, we move right after that swamp, we move into dealing with Lucas, which is kind of a shift in gameplay a little bit. And the point is you are looking for the ingredients for a curing serum. That first, we forgot to mention that the first part in the house, you were looking to get out the mansion. That was the first point. And now you're looking for a curing serum, so that's why you're hunting these different bosses to get the pieces required to get a cure for Mia. So you're really just trying to save Mia. And in this next section, when you start talking to Lucas, I think you put it best, Daryl, when you call it the Saw gameplay. Saw-like gameplay. There's not a lot of fighting once you get to Lucas. You got to solve his puzzles. Very much a puzzle-like. and then you get into the world where you have to play his little game to get to him, and I thought that was extremely interesting, honestly. And then you do get a little bit of fights, but it's mostly focused on dealing with his little games.
Yeah, Lucas was already like more or less a psychopath before he was infected, so he was very much like every time he kidnapped someone, he had them go through these unwinnable games. One of which you can find as a tape, so that if you watch the videotape first and throw it in the VCR, those existed one day, kids, back in the day. You throw the tape in the VCR, and you could play through different sections of the game that took place before Ethan got there various years ago or recently and whatnot. I don't know who leaves them sitting around, but whatever. You can play those, and one of those is one that's essentially where you essentially play and you're safe to do trial and error, essentially, with Lucas's puzzle. Because for some reason he decides to use the exact same puzzle on Ethan, but if you watch that tape first, then you could do it easily. Now, of course, I messed up, and Dion messed up, because I remembered, oh, right, we played the tape for a reason.
Exactly.
At the last minute and burned. But once we remembered that, it literally took us 2 seconds. That section, for me, it was still a little weak compared to the mansion, because it's where the game got really linear. For a moment. But at the same time, I still liked it for more reasons than I did with the swamp. And going back to the cure real quick, Ethan's only getting around because we're getting fed breadcrumbs of notes from one of the other members of the Baker family, Zoe, who doesn't, she wants to essentially, it's a weird combination of she wants to help her family, but at the same time they're too far gone, so she really just wants to cure for herself. So actually this segues perfectly into what almost the final, more or less the final hours of the game. It starts where you have to choose between Mia after you get her back and after you deal with Jack again, because of course he becomes a big monster and returns. But you get Mia back, and then you have to decide, okay, well, I used one of the vaccines, whatever, on Jack so he would stop getting up and kill him.
Yeah.
But now Ethan only has one more, so he only has one for either Mia or Zoe. The canon choice is obviously Mia. I forget why I was even pick Zoe. I'm pretty sure you just game over immediately, because it's maybe not immediately. You get like a fail cutscene or whatever. I don't remember. You pick Mia, and then you both head off to a ship, which as much as I like what they did with the ship is originally where Mia was originally employed by a whole different agency. I believe it was the Connections, and forgive me if I'm wrong. I might be mixing things up here. In the long story short, Ethan didn't know that Mia was on some shady shit. I'm gonna put it that way. and keep it short. She knew more than she let on. And she had lost her memories from that time when she was infected, when Evelyn, who is the true big bad, aka Grandma, when Grandma infected her. So you find yourself back on the ship, Ethan's out of commission, and Mia is who you take control of during that time. And you go between flashbacks and the present, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, you're going back, your flashbacks in the present. I do, taking this section over, I do think the ship isn't super exciting, but this is like, they literally start revealing everything in the game right here. This is where everything starts getting revealed. You're like, oh, okay, this is what's happening, because since Mia is a secret agent, and then you find out, everything about Evelyn. You start understanding who Evelyn is, why she's treated the way she is, and how she got us in all this mess. And during that, as you go through the ship through the whole time, and this piece is long. I want to say it's a couple hours of just going up and down through the ship. I think the ship is, from a design standpoint, the ship is cool and very realistic. It's big. It makes sense, the size and the different floors.
Yeah.
I do think it's real. I think it gets a little boring after a while, just the little areas. But I will say, I think it's awesome how they took the gameplay from the beginning of the game, because as you can tell from talking through this, the gameplay evolved as we played through this game, right? Different gameplay levels as we got through the game. And this whole final story location starts you off with nothing. So you start off like you were in the first tower, where it's a little scary. You don't have any weapons. You're running away from stuff, and then you slowly get weapons. You slowly get armed, and you're getting back to where you were. And I love how it's just showing that progression twice. I think it's really, really interesting. And then having that story tied in, also very good, right? Because you're in it, even if you're getting tired of that level, you're still in it because the story is so attractive. I do think there's a lot of backtracking though in that first part.
Essentially, they kind of, in a different sense, they reuse/redo the first hour of the game, like Dion said, where you're unlocking doors, and the whole doggone ship is essentially a puzzle, where you're figuring out how to get from one location to another because the ship is broken down, doesn't have power. You have to find fuses and wires in the center, and by this point in the game, you're essentially close to the end. So I could see why this would be grating. Heck, it was grating on me for a little bit because I was just like, okay, I love this, but at the same time, I am kind of done, and I just want to go get Ethan and go. So by the time you eventually get to the point where you get Ethan, free him, and then Mia gives in fully to Evelyn's control over her because she's still infected. Well, she's still infected-ish. I don't understand entirely because Ethan gave her the antidote, but assuming the antidote is slow working, then I could see Evelyn overpowering her because she was resisting the whole time. She should not. Realistically, you should not have been able to run around that ship as okay as you were without Evelyn getting in your head. But she fought as hard as she could. I know banned footage kind of goes over a bit of how you could fight against Evelyn. Banned footage is one of the DLC. Didn't play it, but it's definitely worth looking into if you want to know more backstory about how all of that came about. But the game does a good job of explaining it in the core narrative. Speaking of which, by the time you get back to Ethan, well, you know the long stretch that you have to run through to get back to the mansion, right, Dion?
Yeah, you gotta go all the way back through the whole ship. And then you gotta go through get outside and make your way all the way back to the mansion. It's
and it's a gauntlet essentially because you're fighting enemies on the way there.
Yeah, it's like a last hoo-ha, right? And then you get to the final boss fight. That it wasn't a difficult boss fight, but I did find it rewarding. I did enjoy the boss fight, and it was a spectacular visual. But I think they were just trying not to make you suffer after running that gauntlet is what I think was the point. And I thought it was very successful. I think they ended it with a bang. And then, Mr. Man, Chris Redfield, shows up out of nowhere.
Discount. Sorry.
It's great. It's great. Very, very important, I think. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to the final hour, I should say?
Not really, not off the top of my head. There are definitely a few things I want to talk. I do want to talk a bit more about, but honestly, for the sake of time, they'll have to wait until a future video. If you are interested, it'll be going over Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, mostly in gameplay, but some story aspects might come up because you can't really talk about these games without how narrative ties into how the games play. That's all I really have to say on that. Besides, if you like horror, this is definitely a good place to start if you want to get into Resident Evil. Or I'd say go back and play the old games. But you know what? This is a fresh protagonist. He doesn't know as much as anybody else who's just getting into it. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. It's not too bad. I do say if you're not a horror fan or you get scared easily, definitely grab a friend. That's what I did. Turn the lights on, turn the volume down, and it will not be too bad. And it's definitely
or watch a YouTuber
experience. Or I never condone that for a playthrough of a game, but if you want to, that's up to you.
I'm just saying, if someone really get taken like that, maybe they'll take someone who's jokingly talking over it,
Yeah, I just don't know if it's worth it. But I will say, let's give our closing thoughts. I think I will give mine first. I do, as new to Resident Evil, and that's what I am, this game was an entryway for me. I did love it. I thought it was great. I think it's a really great game, even though I'm not a fan of horror. I just liked, the story. I thought it was very interesting. I thought the gameplay was good. I love, the atmosphere was tense. Music, excellent. The characters and the boss fights were awesome. I love the boss fights. I think they were phenomenal. And they really, they challenge you. They're not too difficult, but they're really cool and they're really creative. And I just have to give it to them. I think this game is excellent. I think it's a must play. And even if you're not a horror fan, it's definitely something for everyone. You just have to take some extra precautions as you start.
And if you have big balls, and I'm talking massive, like drop to the floor, by all means, play it in VR.
No way. No way. What?
I'm just saying, it's there if you want to try it. But on my part, all I gotta say is that it's good to be home. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this out here. I think that's all we got for now. Thanks to you all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQueue. If you think we might have glossed over something big or might need to expand on something more, feel free to say so in the comments and we can possibly even capture it in a future video. Or, if you want to throw your own opinion in the hat, then feel free to add it in the comments as well. But until then, next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See ya!
Don't approach the girl in the black dress. There are a lot of little girls in these horror games.